Hi everyone, I'm Ashley McDowell and today I'm going to be talking about the chemistry behind pesticides and herbicides. So what exactly are pesticides? They are chemical or biological agents that incapacitate, kill, or otherwise deter pests from ruining crops. Herbicides are a type of pesticide, but they are specifically designed to kill or deter plants from ruining crops. So that could be like weeds or unwanted flowers or anything that would take away nutrients from the crops or otherwise harm them in any way. Next up, we're going to talk about the history of pesticides and herbicides. And so you can see in this photo that 4,500 BCE, the Sumerians were using sulfur compounds to control insects and mites. And as you read on, lots of different populations were trying to figure out how to keep their crops healthy. And then in 1939, there was a discovery of DDT, or diphenol trichloroethane, which is called DDT, and it was the first of the modern pesticides created, and it had great effects at combating many deadly insect-borne human diseases, and it was very effective in commercial crops and home gardens. However, it was put out of use around 1970 when there became a large sum of accusations surrounding toxicology and lots of environmental issues and its carcinogenic properties. Kind of like the commercials you see right now about Roundup weed killer, it was a huge deal then and a huge deal now. So what does all this mean and how exactly does chemistry help with the pesticide use? Basically, people use chemistry to determine the duration of retention of the chemical, also known as persistence. And pesticides depend on chemical and physical properties such as volatility, hydrolytic stability, and oxidation. And there are many in-depth experiments that are conducted to test the durability of a possible pesticide and its different physical and chemical properties as it's being broken down, diluted, heated, and put under a variety of other stresses, just like how we do in our labs, of course, to a much more serious and complex degree, because the stuff will obviously be sprayed in huge amounts over all of the food that we consume. So it's not exactly like our lab experiments, but the setting is similar nonetheless. So as you can see in the bottom picture here, that's a very much more complex lab setting than what we have. But the top photo is something that we could easily see in our lab manuals. The next thing that we're going to go over is the actual production of pesticides. And this is basically passing the things that the chemists did in the lab to the next step, which is synthesizing active ingredients to actually kill the pests. And they also have inert ingredients that allow for spraying and coating of the infected area. So again, this is kind of like our lab, where we're now taking a beaker of a solution and adding other things to it to see what happens. Then the actual manufacturing portion, which involves synthesizing the active ingredient in a lab setting again, and it's usually prepared into a liquid or powder form and then is diluted and then subsequently applied to the crops to kill the pests, whether they be plants or insects or whatever else. So again, we're going to go over the steps of synthesizing, formulating, and diluting the pesticides and herbicides and the production of them. And it includes a very complex chemical experiment done by trained chemists in a lab setting. And these chemists are responsible for creating the active ingredient. And then this experiment involves specific reagents and catalysts and takes place in a controlled climate. So you can imagine writing a notebook entry about this and involving these in your entry, all of the catalysts and reagents and the equations and things like that. And then those chemists or another group of chemists formulate the active ingredient and get it ready to ship where it's going to be diluted using a familiar formula we all know, M1V1 equals M2V2. And then they use those values to determine the right ratio of pesticide to crop. The quality control and chemistry of pesticides and herbicides aid in the pesticide use and synthesis of those chemicals because, of course, too much of the chemical or the wrong concentration can end up deadly to the wrong population, whether that be a certain animal or bees or anything that actually helps with the crops. Or you can also hurt humans if we were to ingest too much of a pesticide or something along those lines. And manufacturers have highly trained chemists working in the lab settings to test each pesticide for its potency. And also they test for things like emulsification, densities, color, pH, and much more. So again, this is kind of like a much more complex version of our lab setting where we're testing out different properties of chemicals and solutions. And then next, we're going to talk about a very familiar chemistry concept, and that is Henry's Law and how it works with pesticides. So there's a proper use of pesticides being used based on the understanding of how the chemicals actually work. And this behavior is influenced by the chemical solubility in and water vapor pressure and physical and chemical properties and the concentrations in the soil equilibrium. And these are governed by Henry's Law. And using this chemistry is a major determinant of the rate of pesticide volatilization from the soil. So it's really interesting to see things that we've actually learned in our class and how they're used in real world settings. And here's my works cited. Thank you guys so much for watching and have a great rest of your semester.